I am delighted to get our conversation overway. If this is your first time joining, if you're dropping a star, welcome to the AirOps CMO series. Previously, we've been joined by Guillaume Cabane of Hypergrowth and of Ramp in some previous months and years. George Bonacci was our last guest as well, who's currently like VP of Growth at Ramp. And today we'll unpack how AI search is reshaping discovery and what CMOs can do now. So Carta is a company who is leading from the front on this, and we're delighted to be joined by Nicole Baer, who will help tell the story of how she and her team have helped operationalize that shift. So, to give her a formal introduction, Nicole Baer is the CMO of Carta, the leading provider of world-class software purpose-built for private capital. She oversees essentially all marketing efforts for the Carta brand and all product lines and is responsible for everything from global brand and product marketing all the way to demand gen, field marketing, and communication. So very wide remit. Prior to Carta, Nicole was the CMO for Logitech's collaboration business, as well as global head of integrated enterprise marketing at Zendesk, in addition to other roles at Aon. And not only that, but she's also the founder of two very successful marketing advisory firms. With all of that, she brings years of experience sensing when the ground is shifting that we're in store for a treat here today, folks. So, Nicole, very much welcome to the AirOps CMO series. Anything else you'd add to that?
No, thank you for the wonderful introduction, Owen. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm super excited about all of the changes that we're seeing from AI in marketing, and we'll talk about all of those things that I'm seeing today.
Amazing. I'm excited for our conversation. So, to give folks, as you trickle all in, a glimpse at our agenda, we're going to try to trace almost like the evolution of AI search and view it through the prism of how like Carta has got ahead of the curve, how they've put in the right systems, how they've like upskilled their team. We'll dive into something that's near and dear to our own hearts, which is content engineering. And then we'll start to close out with kind of Nicole's view on the world, where stuff is going, and a lot of the metrics that are obviously important for us all to consider in today's world. So, getting into it, Nicole, I'm a big follower of yours on LinkedIn. I love the way you like champion your team. You share out like what you're working on, the amazing work the team is doing as well. I think recently I've seen like a ton more kind of like thought leadership from your side around like how AI is implemented on both Carta marketing and the Carta team at Wide. You described AI as one of those real shifts in marketing. How have the team at Carta kind of approached this new era?
Yeah, so I think we're really embracing it. I think that AI is the biggest transformation that I will see in my career as a marketer. I mean, probably as a human too, but definitely as a marketer as well. And I am someone who's biased for action. My team is, I think, follows that same lead at Carta. And instead of sort of, waiting to see what happens with AI, instead we are like fully stepping into how we can create leverage from AI in addition to efficiency. And I think we'll talk today, Owen, about the difference between the two. But how do we really create leverage using AI tools and infusing AI into all the work that we do in marketing?
I love it. Yeah, one kind of like phrase you mentioned there was like bias for action, and I think in preparation for this and like reading through your own like op-ed piece, I feel like that very much like follows through across our experience of the Carta team, and then like generally the work we've seen as well. But taking it back, maybe like a couple of months, couple of years, there was early signals that might have emerged in early 2023. We saw the appearance of OpenAI and this amazing thing called ChatGPT, like this ground was kind of shifting beneath us. And we'll say later 23, we saw like trickles of AI overviews. I believe you joined the Carta team in like early 2024 and kind of mid 24, I think was when we saw AI overviews really kick off. But I think throughout all of that, like pattern and trend recognition is like a key skill set within the role of the CMO. So throughout all of this, how did you stay on top of development so that you could best guide your team through such significant channel changes?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is I definitely take sort of a top-down, bottom-up approach in terms of the way that I think about big shifts and how you recognize patterns, as well as my own sort of intuition that's been developed over the last 25 years of like what is significant to pay attention to.
Mm.
Um, you know, Interestingly enough, I started at Carta April 2024. I think within a couple of weeks of being in seat, AI Overviews was launched. And so it was almost like day one, the web team like sort of pounced on me in the right way to say like something big is happening and you really need to know about this. And it was sort of being prepared for what sort of shifts we might see with AI Overviews. And after they kind of briefed me in, again, sort of the bottoms up, ways of learning about these things, they briefed me in on what they saw, what they believed, would be the outcomes. There was definitely a little bit of fear, partially because, over the years, we've all seen a ton of what I call algorithmic thrash from Google. They change algorithms, everything goes topsy-turvy, it settles down, and then they do it again at some point in time, it goes topsy-turvy, et cetera.
Mm,
And so for that reason, there was a little bit of fear around what are AI overviews going to do to SEO for Carta, which has been an absolute core competency of Carta for several years now. And essentially, my feeling was this could actually be a good thing for us because AI overviews, what we understood sort of early days of AI overviews was that they were going to, according to Google, was that AI overviews would favor expert, authoritative, trusted content. And that is that's what Carta thrives in doing. Our audiences need expert content. We're serving CFOs, general partners, limited partner deal teams, et cetera. We're in
mm,
a highly regulated space. And so for us, our content, like foundationally, has always been expert, authoritative, and trustworthy. So it's sort of like music to my ears when, I heard that that was what we believed the AI overviews would
mm,
favor. So we kind of went into the advent of AI overviews with sort of optimism, and that proved to be correct. So, we had several like sort of happy parties in SEO land around the fact that AI overviews was actually giving us a bump in traffic, not a deprecation in
mm,
traffic. And so that gave us some confidence that, okay, maybe actually this world of LLMs, as they started, as more started coming on the scenes and we saw this big spike in how people were using LLMs, we thought this could actually be really great for us. And so let's lean in.
mm.
We've been doing so ever since.
I love it. Yeah, definitely not every team was as receptive to Google rolling that out, but I think that meant that, again, you had a lot of your strategic foundations in place. And I think it echoes back to what you mentioned of SEO being a core competency for Carta. So maybe where many CMOs felt behind when those AI overviews launched, and we see the emergence of a Perplexity or ChatGPT, like Carta had a massive head start as you kind of positioned it there. Like, tell us more about like how past investments in that like trusted, authoritative content and maybe the processes around it, like
Mhm.
set you all up for like great success.
Yeah, so we have a fantastic editorial team. So shout out to the editorial team that might be here today, as well as an SEO team. Just absolute rock stars. We've got editors who came from the world of VC, who came from the world of PE, and so they are experts in their field, and that shows in our content, right? And so we had this foundation built over years of understanding what kinds of content best served our customers and prospects, and also what would sort of scale across different marketing channels. So what would scale not only from our website, but to social, for example, what could we atomize? And we also are very lucky to have not only wonderful editors, but thought leaders, including Peter Walker, who runs our insights team, Anthony Semino, who runs our policy team. So we had a diversity of content, but the common sort of the red thread across all of our content was that it was trusted, expert, and authoritative, and we never veered off of that mission.
Mm,
And so we had this very strong foundation that then turned into being this advantage that we had when it came to LLMs. And so we think about that, really across the board with our brand. It's not just in the ways in which we develop content. Those are brand values for Carta as well: trusted, authoritative, and expert. So we really had a great foundation going into this, and I know that we're fortunate in that regard. I've talked to many CMOs who are not in that position and are really trying to catch up to figure out how they can
Mm.
optimize for LLMs.
Got it. You mentioned that being like core, the trusted, authoritative aspect of like everything that Carta does.
Yeah.
Within the team, Nicole, like how do you help like foster that need or like how do you help foster the process of extracting those insights? Like I can imagine Carta has like amazing people on like the legal side, people who've gone super deep on a lot of the products. How do you knit it all together so that the amazing editor can help tell that like fantastic story?
Yeah, some of it is we've built workflows on the team that also lent itself to the ways in which we think about how we work with
Mm.
AirOps. But we've got, amazing fund accountants on the team, former CFOs, definitely legal experts, regulatory experts. And so we pull all of those people for, as well as our customers, by the way, too, to really pool these insights that we are able to use across our various digital channels.
I love it. Yeah, it's all about starting with that strong foundation. And I think like everything you're saying kind of culminates in like this slide as well as AI search isn't this like whole new revolution. It's really like where you have the core principles baked into your processes. It's actually a great amplifier for fantastic content. So I know you mentioned like algorithmic trash where Google does an update, but like all these engines really aim to like serve the user. They aim to make sure that the best content is prioritized for what you search for. I loved your kind of framing within the piece as well as treat it as a growth multiplier and not a risk. And I think it's maybe a core attribute within Carta as well to look for leverage from AI rather than aiming for like efficiency. Maybe just tell us more about that approach.
Yeah, there's a couple different principles that I sort of thread through the marketing team that I think are wonderful from our CEO, Henry. One is oftentimes he asks the question of what could go right as opposed to what could go wrong.
Mm.
And it's really is a wonderful framing to think about things that might seem risky. It's like, if you're doing something experimental or different, think about what could go right instead of what could go wrong. I mean, not to be Pollyanna-esque about it and ignore the downsides, but if you lean in, what could be great and what could create leverage, essentially. And we've been talking about this in the marketing team too. And it's the idea that AI in its best sort of use case, I believe right now, is how it helps us create leverage in the market and leverage around our strategy, particularly around our growth strategies, as opposed to efficiency. And there's nothing wrong with efficiency per se, with the ways in which we use AI today. But efficiency is sort of ephemeral, right? Like you get efficiency gains and then they go away. So you have to continually seek new efficiency gains through AI. The ways in which I think are the best use cases for AI, and this is what we talk about it as an executive team across the board, and including the way in which we build our products, is how are we providing leverage, both for Carta and the way that we think about how we use AI, and then how are we also providing leverage for our customers as well in our products, and how AI is integrated into our products. And so the idea is that leverage is like this, potentially infinite,
Mm.
advantage that you can gain, and that we sort of use that aperture in the way that we evaluate our AI strategy. And in fact, we're developing work streams on the marketing team that we're going to be announcing next week. We've got 5 discrete work streams where we believe that these work streams are going to help us create more leverage for Carta, and we're very focused on them in the marketing team, creating tiger teams
Mm.
around these work streams, and they all seek leverage, not just how can we do things faster, cheaper,
Yeah.
et cetera, but instead could actually give us a leg up on our growth strategies.
I love it. Yeah, there's never a shortage of jobs to be done on the marketing team. And like even
Yep.
just echoing back to like growth multiplier, like when we think about like search as a pie, like from recent conversations I've had with like some amazing SEO people and other like CMOs, I don't think it's like a trade-off between like Google and these other engines. It's like search is far more like democratized. So like people are asking more questions, they're going deeper, they're like landing on your website with more intent. They're able to like progress down the funnel at like a faster rate. So I think everything you mentioned there of like evolving the team, like looking for leverage is so important because now you're not just looking to write amazing content for humans. It's also like there's a new engine in the mix. So kind of as we call out here, there's like dual audiences and the nature of the authoritative content. It's well structured, it's fresh, like it's so important.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, 100%.
Th this thing here about like leaning in, I love. Like when we talk about like resourcing or investing in it as a channel, maybe weigh it up of like how you look at like AI search and this evolution of SEO
Mhm.
versus maybe like how you would think about like brand or paid.
Yeah. So like I don't like parking lot AEO in like this separate sort of place in marketing. Like we're fully integrating it into the way that we think about our marketing strategy. So I think that's one important thing. The other thing here that's mentioned that is so important is clock speed, like avoiding the cold start problem. This is something we also talk about endemically at the company around like don't get so mired in like analysis paralysis and discovery, proof of concepts, et cetera, that we're not able to act quickly in creating leverage through AI. So we avoid the cold start problem. There's definitely like, a top-down sort of direction from me that everyone should be using AI in their jobs every day. And that they should feel free to experiment, to figure out like, their own best use cases, whether it's efficiency and then really leaning in for leverage as well. So really empowering the whole team on AI. And then also thinking about what we're doing, like that, what we're doing around LLMs and the way in which we're moving forward our AEO strategy is not just only about content, it's actually about our brand as well. One of the things that was a really interesting moment for me as a CMO in listening to some experts on AI talk about what LLMs like. We use we personify, LLMs like they can like something, but they will favor consistency more over anything else. And understandably, that's why, if they're like when they're looking across all available surfaces to return what they think is going to be a valid answer, they're going to be, it's not just, your content they're looking across, it's all of the places, all of the surfaces that they can scrape. And so we think about consistency and we think about being trusted, expert, and authoritative across all of our marketing surfaces. And it's really in the ways in which we're thinking about how we're evolving our brand alongside that. So, that like thinking about LLMs in the context of brand evolution too, which I think is something that's important for all CMOs to be considering.
Yeah, it's so interesting how we've maybe gone from a very like scientific channel of SEO where it had like very defined, mature metrics to now it almost feels more like digital PR. Like it's the expression, it's the representation of what your brand is and stands for and how you communicate it. So I think like the brand evolution piece you mentioned there of like how everything holistically comes together is like yeah, it's super like pertinent for the time for where we are because yeah, like how you communicate if you do a positioning change, if you have a new product launch, like
Mhm.
it does make slight tweaks to how the market how you want the market to perceive you. So I love the way it all kind of like comes holistically together.
Yes, it does with brand.
Yeah. On this then, so you've mentioned a little bit so far about like the team. You've mentioned new work streams and workflows. Like maybe share how this like private credit launch shows what's possible with everything kind of coming together. And then I love the piece as well you put in the article about like reaching new audiences. So how did it all come together kind of in this launch?
Yeah, so this was super interesting. It was sort of fortuitous that we had just implemented AirOps when we also decided to strategically make a move into private credit. And for those that are not familiar with private credit, it's really a subset of private equity, which is a huge area of growth for Carta, for our fund admin business. And we wanted to make a bigger move into private credit fairly quickly. We were getting early signal from the market that there could be product market fit. But we were kind of, contemplating this is a whole new audience for us. And looking at this like big potential lift in how we were going to go to market for private credit successfully and be able to act on this early signal and this inbound interest that we were getting from private credit firms. And so fortuitously, we had built some private credit content. So we weren't bereft of content. We did have some. And essentially what we did was really turn to AirOps to be able to optimize the content we had and to build new content using AirOps workflows. And it allowed us to be able to achieve clock speed on this launch into private credit, which has been quite successful in early days and get us into market far more quickly than we would have been able to otherwise. I think I can say sort of back of the envelope, we went from like months to weeks in being able to launch into this new market. So that's, for a CMO, that's a really big unlock. And again, we did have some good foundational pieces. We had some great like messaging and positioning work that had been done by our product marketing team, but we were able to really to bring that together and have a force multiplier through how we used AirOps for this launch.
I love it. Um, it's amazing to see the platform come to life and then like help launch new products, move into new audiences. Like as a marketer, like your ability to shorten that time to launch, again, ability to broker new audiences and new users is just like fantastic opportunity that again, kind of as you
Yeah,
position it, it's like AI enabling rather than just like AI doing all the work for you.
that's right. Yeah, 100%. And it's been, yeah. And so we're really, this is something that now we view this again as being able to provide us leverage with additional markets that we're thinking of as well.
I love it. Again, I might echo back, Nicole, if you don't mind, to one of your recent LinkedIn posts. I loved this. It was kind of like, again, taking a lot of what you mentioned so far and bringing it into what is actionable. And again, Carta, to the likes of AirOps, much bigger company, better defined processes, something that like we aspire to be in terms of all the systems and workflows and people as well that you have. But I think it's very well like documented here, your core tenets of how kind of like AI team systems comes to life on the team. Maybe walk us through these couple of points here.
Yeah, so I think the first one is like kind of where we started this conversation and the ways in which we're thinking about how we're integrating AI into the work that we do in marketing on a day-to-day basis. And some of that is like, yes, we might start with experimentation, but like move fast into execution from there. And I think there are examples of this across the team, in how we're doing research now, looking at things like synthetic research is a good example of that. Ideation is happening all over the team using LLMs. So, there are a lot of ways in which like, we're on the ground using AI, and I'm very allergic to hand wavy kind of stuff like, oh, we're doing that, that sort of like, oh, we're doing this and that with AI, and it's
Mhm.
not very authentic. That's also sort of the Carta ethos too around product development that like we deeply integrate AI. It's not hand wavy, like let's just slap AI on, you know,
Yeah.
slap AI into, a sentence about a product and suddenly that means it's truly AI enabled or AI integrated. Instead, we really are looking at how does this become kind of like part of the heartbeat of marketing. And some of that again is like enabling and empowering the team to not be afraid. And I think for a lot of marketers, there's a fear factor of like if I, if is AI going to take my job? And that is not remotely my perspective, or Henry, our CEO's perspective. It's that if you don't learn how to use AI, then you're risking your job. And even to sort of double click on that point, now whenever I interview candidates for a role, whether it's a role on my team or I'm interviewing up for other roles on other teams where I'm providing some executive support for that interview process, I always ask, what's your perspective on AI? How have you incorporated AI into the work that you do now at your current job? What do you envision as being sort of best cases for how we would use AI at Carta? And if they don't have a point of view, it's like thumbs down. They
Mm,
have to have a point of view. And so that's really becoming an expectation, not only on the team, but the way that we also bring new people into the team. And then this personalization at scale, I think that's a really exciting avenue for what we believe AI can do, especially around ABM. So we're looking at some of that capability now in order to create like highly personalized content for the purposes of ABM. And then in terms of content and creative, we've talked about how we're using AirOps for content. And then on the creative side, we're looking at some really interesting ways in which we can use AI tools to be able to create sort of like templates of templates so that instead of having to sort of intervene on every use case there is from the sales team or whatever for something that they need created, that they have a set of tools where they can actually prompt what they need to create a new brand ready template and also like approved
mm,
copy that can all just sort of be magically delivered for different use cases that they may have. The new measures of success, and you and I talked about this, Eoin, a little bit, but we're now starting to track the referral traffic we get from all of the major LLMs, and we look at that regularly alongside SEO. So it's not sort of partitioned off to the side.
mm.
We look at kind of the more holistic view of what's happening with SEO and AEO. We find that they can be related at times too, depending upon what's happening with Google, and looking at like, are we pacing and growing our referral traffic? That's what we want. Like we want that to grow. We're not looking at how do we kind of keep that down and keep our SEO consistent for where it was. It's more around what are the puts and takes
Mm.
between SEO and AEO and just viewing it as a mixed. It's a portfolio now as opposed to sort of a single metric we need to be looking at with Google, for example. So looking at, those sorts of different metrics we have for success, as well as how referral traffic from LLMs and how that's impacting referenceability. So referenceability is very important to Carta, top and bottom of funnel. So how are we supporting referenceability when, folks might be asking ChatGPT, what do you think about this vendor versus that vendor that we're also performing favorably in those sorts of questions and prompts. And again, like lastly, as I mentioned here, having the right culture that supports this growth and also really encouraging all the marketers to view the work that they can do with AI as being skill set expanding and supporting our L&D budget, et cetera, to be able to really acquire new skills. Like that's wonderful. I want all of the marketers to acquire skills that's going to help them be more successful, not just in their role at Carta, but wherever they go.
I love it. I think that's a great transition then to like this slide here about
This,
content engineering and Lucy and just like something that's like very near and dear to our hearts. Like again, AirOps is like an amazing platform. It's something like Lucy has had some amazing outcomes on top of. But content engineering to us is like kind of the best way we can almost take some of those things you mentioned, Nicole, and kind of bucket them into what we have here as like three buckets. So the person who's like a systems thinker. They're able to like understand the processes, the operations, and how they like operate on your team and be able to like design them appropriately. But then someone that can also like get into the tool and figure out prompting, figure out how to like orchestrate and build these things. And then what I think is often overlooked, and to your point, it's like where marketers today have like a massive edge over maybe people who want to get in from other industries is they're marketers. They're marketing, they're growth people. They have a super high bar for quality. They have a very like high brand bar. And I think in addition to like all the operational natures of like the skills that emerge in kind of this new era, person who's like an amazing tastemaker who has like the really high bar for quality, almost the marriage of those two we like to think is a like a content engineer.
yeah.
But as we talked about all the systems and processes on the team, like you mentioned, like a cultural shift as well in terms of like mindset. We're very familiar here with Lucy, so I think she helped like champion that. Maybe how do aspects of content engineering or more broadly like the mind shift change come to life on the team at Carta?
Yeah. So Lucy is she's she's not just a persona, she's an actual person on the team. And she's an incredible content marketing manager. And I think one of the things that's a little bit overlooked about like a hidden sort of wonderful skill set of content marketing managers, content strategists, editors, is that they actually create systems in the ways that they think about the content, right? Like they are holding the body of content we have, how it relates to growth objectives, how we systematize content creation and optimization. Like they're holders of all of those skills, and it's a very translatable skill into into a content engineering framework, right? They need to be generally our systems thinkers. Like you wouldn't necessarily think that's a core competency of content marketing, but it like 1,000% is. They think a lot about sort of production optimization and as it relates to systems, they got to deal with legal teams, the
Mm,
sequencing of things, and how to minimize friction in ideation to production is something that's very native to these roles. And of course, they're always thinking about measurement, or at least on our team, like what is the outcome that we're going to want from this piece? And then like the other thing I think about Lucy in particular is definitely the inclination to be a full stack builder. She thinks a lot about process and how to create processes that are going to enable clock speed on the team. She glommed like right away onto these concepts around extractability, for
mm,
example, with LLMs, just seemed to like just got it right away. And probably, in addition to all of those sort of hard aspects of her skill set, the soft aspect of the skill set of having like a curiosity and a growth mindset. She was really excited to get in there with AirOps, and not only work through like our first use case and work on sort of perfecting it, but then how she also brought that to the team and demonstrated how it works to be able to sort of share that knowledge and learning, which also helps sort of not only reduce like the fear factor about like how do we do this,
mm.
but also created ideas on the team around new use cases for how we could use AirOps in other arenas. And so, all of these things sort of came together, and I'd say she's a really good example of this content engineering role that the AirOps is using. I've heard also like, go-to-market engineers, I mean, Clay is using, for
Mm.
example. But I think it's a really good description of the work that she's been doing with AirOps.
I love it. And just to confirm, as you said, Nicole, Lucy's a real person. She just dropped a comment in the chat. So we can confirm Lucy's amazing. As we think about maybe the supporting functions around like a content engineer, like you mentioned like skills are so important. We'll say maybe the content engineer is high across systems, across like building and just like marketing background. For the supporting functions to create like an amazing piece of content at Carta, maybe give us a feel for where other people are looking to upskill because it might not be on the three of these, but it might be on like one or two. They need to like peak higher.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is just like understanding the prompts and really getting
Mm,
in there to understand how to work within prompts to be able to refine as you go. And I think
yeah.
that's something that is a unique skill for marketers that I hope never doesn't go away over
Mm,
time. Like you have to be able to hold attention, for example, to do that and to have critical thinking. Which is why, I still believe that, like Jensen Wong talked about the next killer skill setter from English majors, who
yeah.
can, understand how to work with LLMs. I think that's a really interesting idea that you have to be able to sort of stay in it
Mm,
to get to the end result, but also be able to work within the prompts and the workflow, like work within the workflows essentially to get the result that you want, and the highest quality result that you can achieve. And Lucy's been a great example of like staying with it, like
mm.
staying with hard problems and figuring it out.
Yeah, I love that. It's like when you're working with when you're creating content for an answer engine, like what they do prefer is obviously structured, high readability, but when we're requesting information of them too, like where you can maximize clarity and like precision in what you're asking for, your outputs become so much higher. So it almost makes sense that like someone like you said with that has an English major, someone from a content marketing background has the potential to have such a high outcome in terms of value from, again, access to all of these tools.
Yep.
And then moving on to measurement. So we all do weekly business reviews, Nicole. We're all reporting up to executives and our like C-suite. Like how we measure this whole domain will have changed in the last, or has changed so much in the last 12 months. Like
Yeah.
previously, traffic and maybe like your page rank for individual keywords, that was like always top of mind. In the last 12 months, a lot has changed. So maybe walk us through the metrics that you start to like hone in on now for yourself and then the team.
Yeah. So for sure, like I mentioned before, like we're looking at referral traffic, we're looking at that alongside traditional search metrics. So that's just become I just looked at that this morning, for example. It's also been, the subject of executive conversations where we talk about what we're seeing, with trade-offs with SEO and AEO, or where there are not trade-offs and everything is kind of up and to the right. Why is that? And really trying to hold both as important metrics on the digital side. And then in terms of the way that we're measuring the sentiment score, for example, and brand visibility, some of that, the sort of traditional brand awareness and affinity research that we do, we believe the more that we are creating and like infusing consistency with trust, expertise and authority across all of our channels that's conducive to LLMs. We believe that that will help also on the affinity and awareness and positive sentiment side of things too. So that's something that we're going to start looking at more closely over the next 6 months as we invest more in this consistent brand tone and voice across all of our channels, whether it's content or otherwise.
I love it. Yeah, and it very much like echoes back to what you mentioned earlier of like it's not paid versus brand versus AEO. It's kind of like all of these things have a marriage together. And whether you're doing digital PR or brand or advertising, like it should aim to get like further distribution and then increase your brand visibility in addition to the rest of these kind of like input metrics.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
As we progress towards our finish, we have a couple of takeaways here, Nicole. I love kind of the outline here of systems first. We heard a lot of that between what you're championing on the team and what the team is like leading from the front themselves. There's one other piece I picked out from your article about like aiming to like start small. Again, we often like to say, let's try and like build the whole thing, but it's like, can we avoid the cold start problem? Can we get going? Can we take something small and then kind of like build on it from there? And
Yeah.
then not a phrase I'd really heard before, but clock speed. I love it.
Mhm.
That's like something you've echoed back to a lot as well. Maybe give us your own view of like these key takeaways here as we kind of move towards our wrap up.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I think, again, like I mentioned, experiment and then move fast. So that's sort of the systems first piece, like don't wait too long to build the systems. And that's why, working with AirOps and has been a good sort of match for us because we're very workflows focused, we're very systems focused, and making sure that we moved quickly from experimentation to like how we're working in systems to do this so it becomes sort of integrated into the team more quickly. And then we did start with a single use case. Again, like you start with something, experiment, and then sort of accelerate from there. I'm a big fan of focusing on execution and how do we accelerate and double down on the things that are working. And then also, we kind of talked about this in relation to Lucy, but then how are we having the whole team think about like the systems building around AI as opposed to the efficiency use case. It gets back to this idea of what's leverage versus efficiency. When you're building systems, that's creating leverage. And the idea of clock speed, which is a fantastic term, I think it kind of gives you immediately what the idea is, which is moving fast, essentially. And it's really about not spending too much time, you know, contemplating. I mean, not to say contemplation is bad. And again, like I'm a fan of experimentation, starting small, but then moving fast. But I do think that we're in a period of time where, as CMOs, we have to be the leaders of how we move quickly in this space. I saw something that was like a somewhat shocking stat in Mary Meeker's report, which probably many of you read. It was, or read, or at least skimmed. It was a 350-page, like, a very interesting slide deck on sort of the future of AI. And there was a slide in there that sort of showed what's happening with CMOs and the ways in which they're adopting AI. And it was surprisingly slow, which means that those of us who are moving fast have an advantage.
I love it. As we move towards our last slide here, Nicole, we have many CMOs. I can look at the attendees here in attendance. Listening to you, they've heard a lot today from maybe how to get their team moving, what are the early signals to track, how to encapsulate it all within like a cohesive strategy. Like there was so much that we covered. What's your final message for the CMOs tuning in today?
That's a great question. I mean, first of all, I would say I think we're all in it together. And so, one of the, like, good example is the way that I learned about AirOps was through another CMO. So I think, like, creating and foster, I'm also fortunate to be in some CMO groups in which we talk about these things. So really, like, pulling in your community at whatever level you're at, whether you're a CMO or at any position in marketing, to like talk about things, exchange ideas.
Mm,
As long as you're obviously not giving away a competitive advantage in some way, I think it's good to have, a community of people to share ideas around AI with. I think that's really important. And I think secondarily, like, this mind shift of leverage, not efficiency, I think can be extremely helpful for CMOs in cutting through and making decisions more quickly, right? Like, if
mhm,
that's your mental framework, what's going to give me leverage, then I think it allows us all to move into a different space of not trying to boil the ocean, of how we should be thinking about integrating AI into our marketing strategy, our teams, our talent, profiles, et cetera.
mm.
But instead be able to sort of cut through all of the noise and think about what's gonna provide enduring advantage through leverage.
It makes so much sense. I love it. Even like summary of that like core thesis, I think you like trailed throughout it was like avoid the cold start and just get going. Like I think a lot of that like message came out in your core piece. So as we hit the final slide here, as Nicole mentioned, she heard about it through another CMO. So, Nicole, if you ever would like to share that AirOps is part of the Carta secret sauce, we're obviously very receptive to it. And thank you so much for coming on here today. For people who want to learn more about AirOps, our website is there. We have our visibility to action product in early access. If you want to hit me up afterwards, I'd love to set you up with a like demo and a walkthrough personally. And then Nicole, on your side, if people want to learn more about Carta, connect with you, where's the
Yep.
best place to point them?
Just hit me up on LinkedIn.
I love it. Um, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us as part of the AirOps CMO series. It's been a pleasure. I think people in the audience today have been treated to a master class around spotting signals, how to like invest, how to upskill and champion their team, and really how it all culminates together in measurement. So really want to thank you on a Thursday evening for taking an hour out of your time and to our audience as well for that too. We hope you tune in for the next session. But yeah, have a great rest of your day. And Nicole, thanks again so much.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you later. Bye bye,
Perfect.
folks.